Will you add your voice and tell the government to rebuild with TAFE for a positive future? Take action now at rebuildwithtafe.org.au.
So our three speakers today, we have Blair Boyer, who's the Minister for Education, Training and Skills. We have Michelle Purdy, who's the AEU Federal TAFE President, and we have Andrew Gohl, who's the AEU SA President. So without further ado, I'd like to kick off with the Minister. Blair, your office sent me your bio, so I've learned some very interesting things about you as a result of this, volunteering with the Salisbury SES unit and Modern Meals on Wheels. Grew up on a farm, but I think everyone will be really super pleased to know that that passion for education and that a strong and affordable public education system is there. And so I loved the part that says you believe in meaningful, dignified work at the bedrock of our society and should be available to all South Australians, regardless of their means or background. So you're the perfect person to kick off our National TAFE breakfast. So welcome, hello, over to you.
Thank you very much. And it's lovely to be here this morning with you. And I'll also acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from Ghana land, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Listen, this is an important day, and I think it comes at a time when the future for TAFE does look bright. I think probably brighter than it has looked around the country for probably many years, coming on the back of announcements made just last week by the Prime Minister and premiers and chief ministers of states and territories about an in-principle agreement which has been struck by those states and territories and the new federal government around fee-free TAFE positions, which are going to be funded jointly by the federal government and state and territory governments. And I think it's really pleasing. Of course, there's no state minister who doesn't welcome federal money that comes to their state. It'd be silly of me to suggest otherwise, but I think also it's really good that this new federal government has acknowledged the role that TAFE has to play in these really acute skills shortages. I think we're now officially calling it a skills crisis, which I think is bang on. But it's important that we've seen the role that TAFE has to play in solving that or addressing that crisis has been acknowledged by the new government. And I certainly firmly agree that there's no way we are going to get on top of the skills crisis, particularly in areas in the care sector, which I think are really biting, not just in metropolitan parts of this state, but also in regional areas of South Australia, particularly too, where a lot of people are finding it really hard, I guess, to get those care workers in all sorts of areas like aged care, disability care, and of course in early childhood education and care as well, finding it increasingly difficult to attract and retain staff. And TAFE can play a vital role in addressing that. And I think these fee-free places that are going to be co-sponsored by federal and state governments are a really important first step. So I think it's National TAFE Day comes at a really important time this year, and I think I'm actually off to do a press conference at the Royal Adelaide Show this morning, where we're going to be talking about some of the really great things that are happening in courses around bakery, patisserie and floristry, because there are some examples of that set up at the Royal Show, and I'm going to hopefully encourage some members of the media to come along this morning, and I get an opportunity to talk about the great courses that TAFE does offer and remind people of the important work that it does. And it'll actually be, I think, the fourth time since March, which is not so long ago, that I've done a press conference either at a TAFE or about positive news around TAFE. We started with the announcement that we were going to make good on the commitment we made before the state election to return courses around individual support, ageing, individual support, disability and early childhood education and care to metropolitan TAFE campuses, which has now been done. We had another press conference to highlight the amazing work that's happening in terms of teaching recent arrivals from Ukraine English. We then did one around the new wine and spirits hub, which has been set up at the Metropolitan CBD campus. And then, of course, today is going to be around bakery, patisserie, and floristry courses, and some great things that are happening there at the show. So, if I could speak just briefly, I guess, on behalf of the state government, I think we have taken a different approach than former governments have taken. Probably former governments of both Liberal and Labor persuasion in some respects. We are very keen to rebuild TAFE, rebuild the brand, give TAFE the opportunity to re-enter and offer those courses that have been both popular with students in the past, but also particularly in terms of those courses in the care sector that I referred to earlier, really, really valued by the employers. And when I did that first stand up with Peter Malinaskis to announce that we were bringing those courses back to metropolitan campuses, I was joined there by some employers from, I think it was Helping Hand and Rembrandt, and there was nothing that I could have said there as the minister that would have been more powerful than what they said around why those courses needed to return. And they spoke really, really passionately and strongly about the fact that they had relied on graduates from those TAFE courses for many, many years, because they firmly believed that they were high quality graduates that were needed in those really important and difficult lines of work. So I know that the reputation of TAFE is still strong out there. It just needs, I guess, a supportive government to give it those opportunities. And I think too important to have a state government and a minister who's willing to get out and highlight the good things that TAFE does, because it has too often been treated as a punching bag, I think, in terms of issues around quality, which of course are not particular or unique to public training providers. They are issues that come up from time to time across all training providers, but TAFE always seems to bear the brunt of those attacks, and rarely do we hear the good stories in the community and the media about the great things that TAFE does, particularly around the work it does with people who might be vulnerable or from a more disadvantaged background or from a rural background or a remote background who just wouldn't have had the opportunity to get into the workforce in an area of their choosing if it wasn't for TAFE. And in the 6 months that I've been Minister, I've had the opportunity to go to a number of regional areas, but I also did a trip up to the APY lands and was able to see the TAFE campuses that we have in places like Ceduna, but also Piplajara, which is basically the northwestern extremity of South Australia. And it was really important for me to see that as the minister, so that I can keep that in my mind and remind other people about the fact that if we didn't have a strong TAFE in South Australia, which is a state that more than almost any other in our country has a small population with really big areas, there's a whole lot of people in areas, rural, regional, remote APY lands, who would have access to absolutely no training at all if it wasn't for TAFE. And it's important we have a strong public training provider right across Australia, but I think there's a case to be made that it's particularly important in states like South Australia, where of course you can't expect private RTOs to be able to set up in some of those rural and remote areas and operate successfully. So it's really nice to join you all this morning. It's great to spend time with other people who are passionate about TAFE, and I want to commend the union particularly for having for fighting the fight for so many years and pushing, and the role you guys played doing that was a major factor in the commitments that we have made as a state government to reinvesting in TAFE. So I want to congratulate you for all your many years of hard work and advocacy for TAFE. I look forward to being able to perhaps share some more information with you around what the national agreement and the fee-free TAFE component will look like once we have more details. I'm sure you guys will be keen to hear about that. And I guess just before I sign off, I want to particularly offer a vote of thanks to all the staff, including, of course, all those represented by the AEU and the PSA who have worked and continue to work in TAFE. I want to thank you for all you do. I know it's been particularly difficult in the last 2.5 years, and we're not out of the woods yet. But as the Minister, I acknowledge the incredible work you do, and there's a lot of South Australians who would never have had a leg up into the workforce were it not for the great work of TAFE and the staff who make it run every day. So thanks for a chance to speak to you this morning on TAFE Day, and I look forward to having another chance. I hope to be back to speak to you once we have some more information about these exciting things that are happening on the national stage.
Thank you very much, Minister. Of course, when you do these things on Zoom, you don't get to hear the reaction, but I want to say a big thanks from people who are here to actually be sharing your thoughts on TAFE, your acknowledgement and recognition of union members' work around keeping TAFE at the forefront. That's really important on National TAFE Day to be in that space. We didn't get any questions in chat as we went through, but I'm sure if they come to people's minds, they can pop them in. And if there's anything that we will need to follow up with you, we will. And as you said, we hope to have more and further opportunities to talk about what's coming next in the TAFE space. Please stick around if you can, sit back and enjoy a cup of coffee. Otherwise, we'll look forward to further opportunities. So to everyone, oh, sorry, Blair, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, I will stick around and listen in. I'm just going to move into the car, so I'll switch the video off for a bit. I'm not disappearing. I'm just going to go and do that, and I'll keep listening in.
All right, stay safe. Thank you. All right, everyone, I would like to now introduce Michelle Purdy, who is the AEU Federal TAFE President. And Michelle sent me a bio yesterday, so I also learned important and interesting things about you, Michelle. So that you've worked in TAFE for close to 30 years in Aboriginal support with some teaching, and your involvement in the union started as a workplace rep, then Tasmanian delegate on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Education Committee, before being elected to National TAFE Council Executive, so people might be interested in that. And you've been in the role as Federal TAFE President since 2013, while continuing to work at TAFE as an Aboriginal Support Officer. So this is amazing work. Congratulations. It's really important that we have your voice in this space today. So Michelle, welcome and take it away.
Thank you, Sam. And thank you everyone for inviting me to speak to you today. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Ngunnawal country and acknowledge other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are listening in today and acknowledge the countries that you are coming from and the important role our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander members, students and communities make to the union. Well, first of all, happy National TAFE Day. Can I say I look forward to this every year because it gets pretty exciting. And when else do we get to celebrate what we do and have acknowledgement that what we do is so important to so many Australians around the country. As you heard, in my day job at TAFE, I'm an Aboriginal support officer and run cultural awareness workshops for many of our students. I'm also fortunate to be Federal TAFE President and work with our National TAFE Council Executive, one of whom is your very own Angela Dean here in South Australia. So I hope if there's any important issues that you feel the National TAFE Council Executive should know about, talk to Angela and make sure you keep her informed and our and your SA branch informed about what's important with our TAFE members. I work along many amazing TAFE teachers and other educational staff at home and hear many stories about the fantastic work that TAFE educators do across the country through our NTCE committee. Can I say that you have all been working in extremely hostile environment for so many years, and through sheer determination and perseverance, You've won through and helped win a change of government in your own state, and of course through that a more positive future for TAFE SA. Can I just say, well done. It has been a journey. Every NTCE meeting that we had, it was just doom and gloom. And to hear what you've been going through in South Australia for so many years it really wrenches our soul in the rest of the country. So it's been fantastic to hear that there's been a turnaround and a way to hopefully a way forward into a more positive future for our TAFE teachers, but also students and the rest of the South Australian community. As TAFE teachers, you continue to work hard to teach in difficult circumstances, living with COVID in the community and the ongoing effects that has had for your classrooms and the students that you work with. I'm sure you have to cope with continual change and the move from face-to-face students to many being online for all of the course or for varying amounts of time. You have learned new teaching practices, continue to cope with online learning, and never knowing how many students that you will have in the class on any given day, and the need to catch everyone who misses out a day or a week or a fortnight, how to catch them up and get them through that course successfully. I take my hat off to you in managing that extra workload, in successfully getting your students through their qualifications under such trying circumstances and in an environment that is underfunded and under pressure to make a profit and meet many competing needs. Every one of you is doing a fantastic job, and I absolutely sincerely mean that. You TAFE teachers are such fantastic people. You do it because of your love of teaching, of working with students and preparing people to go out into the industries that you've come from and continue to work in. You're all doing a fantastic job, and I'd really like to see you continue and TAFE SA grow and reverse many of the cuts that you've experienced over that last decade or so. Minister mentioned the announcement about the fee-free TAFE places for 2023. Can I say that that is always, that was a fantastic news, but it's more than that. We need more than those fee-free places, and very much the AEU is wanting to know what is going to be behind that, what structures, what financing, how we're going to encourage students, community people who are not coming in and enrolling in courses that we've currently got to come in and enroll in fee-free places. What's going to keep them there? Also, how are we going to find the teachers to teach those programs, and how are we going to schedule those into the current programs that we've got, and find work placements. There's so many things to work through part of that. So the 180,000 fee-free TAFE places is an excellent start, but there's much work to be done. And I do thank the federal AFP and the state and territory governments for agreeing to that. And we hope that that is just the first step on the way back for TAFE. One of the things that Prime Minister Albanese also mentioned was continuing to cooperate on the design of the long-term national skills agreement, and agreeing to the principles that will shape it. Can I say the former federal government used the national skills agreement to really cut TAFE out of the national agreement. We became on the periphery, and competition has been the thing that's undercut TAFE all along. So I see that the National Skills Agreement, if it's written in a way that will boost TAFE, will ensure that we as TAFE as the anchor institution and public provider of vocational education in Australia, if the National Skills Agreement is written in a way that will complement and grow TAFE and what we do, then that will be a fantastic outcome from the current government as well. So while these announcements have been great, we still need that secure, ongoing and permanent minimum of 70% of vocational education funding for TAFE. So I know that's definitely on the board there, and we'll be looking forward to that happening. But just remember that 70% of a small bucket is still a small amount. So we would certainly hope to grow the funding for public vocational education in coming years. And we also have to remember the ageing infrastructure that we're all working under, and that we have many TAFE campuses that need new and cutting edge equipment and technology that can lead the way and inspire our students to become the leaders of tomorrow in the industries. So it's not enough that keeping what we've got, we've still got to move forward and come out ahead. We also know that, as I mentioned, the TAFE is the anchor institute of vocational education in this country, but we need that to be recognised nationally at all levels of government. TAFE has a proud history of providing high quality educational opportunities and should be funded adequately to continue to do that for all Australians, no matter where they live. We heard the Minister talk about small communities and in remote areas, and most of our states and territories have those areas, including Tasmania, where I'm from. And we need to be able to provide education for everyone, not just those in city and built up regional areas. And we carry heavy loads when it comes to teaching qualifications in our communities and regions. We don't get to cherry pick which courses are the easiest and cheapest to run, and therefore make the most profit, like many of our private profit competitors. TAFE has always carried a social obligation to help rebuild our local communities and provide skilled workers for small and large businesses, and it's never been more important than that. So, but just moving on to National TAFE Day, I hope you've all signed up to the Rebuild with TAFE, either Facebook page or on our website. It's really important that we get as many supporters there and get the message out about what we can do. Rebuild TAFE, but also rebuild Australia with TAFE. And through this year's National TAFE Day, we hope that you'll be adding your name to the open letter to the Prime Minister. If you haven't done that, please go and do that today, and encourage your friends, colleagues and family to do the same. The open letter calls for a new federal government to implement the October federal budget of the 70% total government funding for TAFE, and that'll be part of the range of lobbying and other actions that will be organised for today. We're hoping, and we hope to see photos of any activities that you're doing in your own campuses around holding morning teas, barbecues at your TAFE campuses or workplaces. There are posters that you can download and put up and take photos with. We want you to spread the word and encourage your colleagues and students to sign up to the campaign website and talk about why TAFE is so critically important. And don't forget Twitter. If you're there, keep the TAFE message out there and on Facebook. Please take photos and post them on social media today, and don't forget to use our hashtag National TAFE Day, hashtag Rebuild with TAFE, so that we can capture all that activity on every TAFE campuses. And just finishing up, federal lobbying events planned for National TAFE Day in Canberra. We're starting with our National TAFE Council Executive meeting in just half an hour here at the ACT branch, and then we'll follow with the lobbying and training around and going into Parliament House today to meet with ALP caucus and talk TAFE with our federal Labor members. This evening, we have our National TAFE Day function in the Queen's Terrace at Parliament House, where Minister Brendan O'Connor, Minister for Skills and Training, will give the National TAFE Day address, along with speakers from the Carmichael Centre, the Australian Manufacturers Workers Union, who's partnering with us, the AEU today, and of course, one of our great TAFE teachers. We have, just following on with that, we have had an outstanding win with the ALP winning the federal election last year. We've also seen the Albanese government come out in the first 100 days of their term, making strong statements about TAFE, recognising TAFE as the key drivers of vocational education. There's still a long way to go to rebuild with TAFE. We need every one of you and your TAFE colleagues to celebrate National TAFE Day and the Federal AEU's call to action to continue the fight to restore TAFE to the anchor institute of vocational education for our nation. We've made a great start, but there's still much to go, both in our states and territories and nationally. So thank you so much for having me, and happy National TAFE Day. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Michelle. Thanks for outlining what's happening with you today as part of that lobbying, and for celebrating TAFE workers everywhere, and your ongoing commitment in working in TAFE and also being the national federal president. So TAFE, hang on, federal TAFE president, to get the words in the right order there. So thank you for joining us on a busy day. Again, we've had some comments in chat, so feel free to have a look at those, Michelle, as we go. I think some of your comments resonated with people. That I'm guessing that people have finished their toast if they're starting to get comments going in chat. So feel free to let us know in chat what campus you're on, or maybe what event you're doing at your site today for National TAFE Day. You might be having something very exciting. You might be at a hashtag rebuild with TAFE for some of those photos so that we can see. I'd love to know where people are joining us from, so if you can add it to chat, that would be great. Our next speaker, and we're going fabulously for time, is AEU SA Branch President Andrew Gohl. I didn't ask him for a bio, so he might be a little worried. I've known him for a very long time. He's a high school teacher and unionist from way back, and the things I know about him is he has 3 fabulous and wonderful children. He likes to grow vegetables, but really his heart belongs to the sea as far as I'm concerned. A surfer with a deep, deep connection to public education at all levels, and is also in Canberra as part of this lobbying. So Andrew, I don't think that was too embarrassing for you, but I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Sam. I think you pulled up short and in a couple of areas, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you. Great to see everyone here celebrating National TAFE Day, and you know, like Sam said, I'm here in Canberra on Ngunnawal country, and pay my respects to Ngunnawal elders past, present, emerging, and also pay my respects to elders on whatever country that you find yourselves on today, and remember that you know, the task of bringing self-determination and a voice and treaty and truth to Aboriginal people is an ongoing battle in huge proportions that we must all tackle on a daily basis. So there's work for us to do there too. Also like to thank Minister Blair Boyer for his comments today, and really appreciate his words, as with Federal TAFE President Michelle Purdy too. You know, the themes emerging is, firstly, I think, you know, a real acknowledgement of the battle and the constant fight that that TAFE sector has waged against dramatic underfunding over such a long period of time, and indeed acknowledgement that you know, hopefully there's times are changing, and that those battles have borne some fruit, that we can now see a TAFE which meets the needs of Australian people, and certainly meets the vocational education training needs, particularly at such a significant time of skills shortage. So happy TAFE Day, everyone. And in saying that, just want to make a few comments. I think it's important to note that there are functions of government that must be owned and guaranteed by the government for public good. and to ensure that their provision in times of war and crisis. I think about water and power and transport infrastructure, health, and of course, public education are the cornerstones of a fair and equitable democratic society. And frankly, it's a disgrace that Australians have been failed by government, state and federal, Liberal and Labor, who've sold these foundation utilities for a budget sugar hit and left big business and private providers the responsibility to deliver these services. The common experience is that private enterprise, driven by selfish profit, has put people last. And it's no more evident than in the vocation education sector. Every day on my way to the AEU, I drive past sites that were formerly bustling TAFE colleges located at O'Halloran Hill and Panorama, and every single day I'm reminded that these state governments have been equally guilty of running TAFE into the ground at the expense of people's access to quality vocation education training. And every day I'm reminded how the TAFE sector in SA was decimated by the loss of thousands of educators who offered trade and training expertise urgently needed by the state and nation right this very minute. So on National TAFE Day, we're here to celebrate TAFE's achievements. But a bit like the willow that bends in the wind, even in the face of economic rationalism, the political ravages of underfunding, mismanagement, course cuts, and the soul-destroying loss of departed colleagues, TAFE, thanks to its highly qualified, committed and inspired educators, has continued to transform people's lives and create opportunities for South Australians to learn and innovate in their field. In turn, TAFE SA is respected and trusted by students, their communities and industries because TAFE meets society's vocation education needs and South Australia's economic requirements. And I applaud and pay tribute to the commitment shown by TAFE educators across the state to student wellbeing and vocational success. And while we recognise the successes of TAFE built on the talents of its educators, it's right to point out that these very same education workers are working longer hours at a greater intensity, with more than half of the TAFE educators describing their workload as manageable for half the time to entirely unmanageable thanks to a crippling administrative load and dealing with compliance. If TAFE is to rebuild, so too must TAFE SA reconnect with its education workers and consult with them for rebuilding TAFE needs the ideas of educators who are respected and valued by their employer. South Australia's social and economic success is dependent upon a well-funded, fully functional TAFE. In June 22 Labour Market Quarterly, South Australia and Tasmania recorded the highest unemployment rate of all states and territories at 4.3% against a national figure of 3.5%, despite being in the grip of a major skills shortage. And it's bizarre, but despite these unemployment figures, by major occupation group, employers had the most difficulty filling vacancies for labourers, 38% were filled in the last year. Employers also had trouble filling vacancies for technicians and trades workers, 48% of those jobs were filled, with recruitment of automotive and engineering trades at 34%, and construction trades workers problematic at 41%. So there's a huge role for TAFE to play there. And when we consider the vast range of offerings at TAFE, it's a no-brainer that TAFE must be the government-guaranteed solution to provide the skills and education training for the unemployed, to meet the industry demands for skilled workers and ensure a dynamic economy, because in times of crisis, it is the government we turn to for stability and for answers. And while demand for traditional trades and skills will always be TAFE's bread and butter, Australia needs to develop and expand its green energy production and storage capacity. Workers in carbon-based energy production need transition to sustainable energy production. For these workers, and indeed the future workforce, TAFE has the capacity to expand its program to train workers for the management and maintenance of new technology. Being bold, Australia through TAFE has the potential to skill Australian workers in preparation for a global expansion into sustainable energy. And as industry struggles to meet its demand for skilled labour, TAFE again is well positioned as an accessible and inclusive provider of vocation education training. The recently convened National Jobs and Skills Summit identified that there needs more to be done to support groups within our community who are underrepresented in the workforce. Women make up but 2% of the trade workforce. This figure has remained constant for the last 25 years, and it's little wonder when the barriers to women's participation have persisted throughout this time. It's a multifaceted problem. Too little inclusive information for young women in schools, a masculine workplace culture, real or perceived, and poor support systems have discouraged many women from participating in otherwise rewarding career path in the trades. And TAFE has the capacity and the culture to ensure inclusive vocational education and training for women. For our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters, less than half of working age Indigenous were in work, that's 49%, in 2018, compared to 3/4 of non-Indigenous Australians in the last decade. This employment gap closed only 1.3% in the last 10 years, putting Australia on track to close the Indigenous employment gap in roughly 200 years. TAFE is well positioned to cater for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in vocational education skills from essential work to the trades. Essential work skills to the trades. Workers who've been disadvantaged in employment because of physical and neurological challenges should also be given the opportunity to train and contribute to the social and economic capital and be work ready to meet the demands for skilled workers and contribute to an Australian economy and feel like valued citizens. Imagine the benefits to an Australian culture as this group of workers is trained by TAFE and prepared for a world of work where their contribution, supported by inclusive TAFE vocational education and training, is celebrated. Addressing the underrepresentation of these groups requires targeted programs to be implemented by TAFE to ensure that all Australians have the opportunity to participate in the development of skills and education needed right now to address the current and projected labour shortages. These progressive responses to the national skills shortage will not be achieved without significant investment in TAFE. And the AEU has warmly welcomed the Prime Minister's investment of $1.1 billion for 180,000 fee-free TAFE places announced during last week's Jobs and Skills Summit. This is in addition to the 465,000 fee-free TAFE places announced as an election promise. And this will be a shared cost to state and federal governments. So here in South Australia, I want to acknowledge the commitment made by Minister Blair Boyer and the Malinauskas government to TAFE SA and reinstate courses cut by the Liberal Marshall government in 2020. These include the subsidised courses in aged care, disability service, early childhood education and care, business administration, education support, health administration, dental assistance, food processing and building construction. Now let's fix the dysfunctional business model. Out of a crisis comes opportunity. So let's rebuild TAFE for an inclusive, highly trained, quality public vocation education training sector. And let's invest in a positive future and rebuild in TAFE. And just to reiterate Michelle's words, you know, how important it is that we're all part of that campaign and that we continue lobbying for TAFE and lobby those politicians to ensure they deliver on their policies. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew. There's some reactions on screen, and your words also, a couple of people put some comments in chat that you might like to have a look at as people are feeling that exhaustion that you talked about in this space. So there's some obstacles to overcome, and there's some hope on the horizon from the things that everyone has been talking about, particularly you were talking about there. So thank you very much for joining us at the beginning of your busy day as well. So we'll take the comments on chat and we'll have a look and we'll share. I'm wondering if one of the team has put in or can put in the Rebuild with TAFE link that Michelle Purdy was talking about, so that people could sign the open letter to, Angela. Angela Dean is now on screen where the Michelle Purdy square is. Angela Dean is the campaign organiser with a TAFE focus here in the AEU branch in South Australia. And so it'd be great if she puts that campaign link there so people can finish up their morning National TAFE Day breakfast by actually signing on that letter. And perhaps it's one of the things that people can share with their colleagues today, with community, about Rebuild with TAFE. We need to make sure that we keep on it. From Andrew, Michelle and Blair all talked about the commitment of union members to making sure that TAFE stays at the forefront of people's minds. So that's an excellent plan for today. I just see that Andrew has raised his hand. 1 minute to go. Go.
Thank you, Sam. Look, I also wanted to recognise Angela and her considerable work in supporting TAFE workers across South Australia, and in particular, her work in getting today together. So thanks very much, Angela. You're in the next room, but it looks like you're a screen away to me. And I also want to acknowledge too the hard work of TAFE Divisional Council, who through many years of such tough campaigning are still together and still driving ways to improve on TAFE. So thanks also very much to TAFE Divisional Council for your excellent work. Thanks, Sam.
That commitment is definitely evident everywhere. And we hope that you can take that commitment and that drive, that activism through National TAFE Day that's ahead of you. I'd love it if people who have joined us, even if you've stayed off screen, could find the reaction buttons, which is at your menu, on your menu, either at the bottom or the top of your screen. Find the reaction buttons and see if there's something that says, hey, this is how I'm going to kick off my National TAFE Day. These are the feelings that I'm taking with me into today as we continue to recognise and continue the hard work that it takes to keep TAFE going. So I see some hearts, some parties, I see all sorts of things, and some really great comments and thoughts. So this, oh, cat's eyes, love our cat's eyes. So this concludes our National TAFE breakfast. We hope you had Andres, a strong arm, I love it. We hope that you had an inspirational morning at a good breakfast and you are ready to take on the day. We'll see you in the campuses, in the work that you are all doing. And we, as Blair and Andrew have said, we'll have opportunities to get together again very soon. I'm going to sign off. I've been Sam, the AEU SA Union Education Director. Great that you were here. See you later, everyone.